Get ready to enter a brave new world with your host, Vasant Dar.
Brave New World is supported by the Center for Data Science, or CDS, at NYU. If your organization is interested in engaging with CDS through student projects, please email cdsindustry@nyu.edu. For more color on the podcast and additional commentary, please subscribe to my newsletter at vasantdar.substack.com.
Hello and welcome to Brave New World. My guest today is Alex Wiltschko, founder and CEO of the AI and smell company called Osmo.ai. This is Alex's second appearance on the podcast, so check out our previous conversation as well, which is episode 81 of Brave New World. And if you're interested in smell, you should also check out episodes 90 and 62. Episode 90 is on smell and the brain with Sandeep Robert Datta at Harvard, who was also Alex's PhD advisor. And episode 62 is with my olfaction colleague and research collaborator Dima Rinberg at NYU. The last time we spoke, Osmo was in R&D phase. The company now has some products in the fragrance market that I'm looking forward to hearing about from Alex, and also getting some insights into the role of AI in the smell industry. Alex, welcome to Brave New World. I am delighted to have you on the show.
It's great to be back. It's been a while. Excited for the conversation.
It has been a while. It's been a year, actually. And, before I came here, I was looking at my emails and why I really got into smell myself, And there was a high school student from Robbinsville, New Jersey, someone called Arasha Huja, who reached out to me one day and said, "Hey, Prof, I run a sneaker business on the side, and it's a really irrational market, and I'd like to do some research with you." And I said, "Wait a minute, you're a 15-year-old running a sneaker business?" He says, "Yeah, it's a really irrational market, and if you can get the right products, you can make a lot of money." And I said, "How do you guarantee authenticity?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, there's this company. I got to pay him 15%. It's called StockX."
Full circle. Okay, I know where you're going.
so that was 3 years ago, and that's what sort of prompted me to really get into, become a researcher in this area. So it was amusing to see that going 3 years back, because I know that StockX is a client of yours.
Yes, no, they are. It's really, really fun to work with them. Briefly about that. People literally sniff the shoes you send StockX to verify their authenticity. Fake shoes do smell different than real shoes. I've smelled a lot of these shoes at this point. And we built a device and a software platform which sniffs it for them. And it's tireless. It works 24/7. And it's consistent, which is something that people can't do day in, day out in a warehouse. So it's super fun to kind of connect all these dots in a way that I don't think any of us could have predicted. But here we are, actually sniffing shoes in StockX with our technology.
Yeah, amazing. Because I asked him, I said, is it that they've been warned that you can make out? He says, no, it's all about the materials.
Yeah.
That you can tell whether the materials are genuine or not.
Yeah.
So that was 3 long years ago.
Indeed, it feels like forever, but here we are.
Yeah, and in fact, a lot has happened since the last time we spoke.
That's right. Yeah, in a year, my gosh, it really does feel. It feels like a week and also 5 years at the same time. But a lot has happened. I mean, the big headline is, we built this company Osmo to digitize our sense of smell, and we've actually done that. So we can teleport smell now. We can take any smell, bring it into the lab, make a digital copy of it, and then make a physical reinstantiation or physically reprint any smell. And we've gotten very, very good at that. And now we do that routinely. So the first one we did was this Plum, which you might have seen online, but we can smell that together today if you want. And on the virtue of that, the AI system that we've built for understanding scent, which we call olfactory intelligence, or OI, is getting really good at designing fragrance. And so we launched a fragrance company that can design and manufacture fragrance, and that's called Generation. So that launched just 4 weeks ago, and we're already in business, and we're building beautiful fragrances for people.
So let me get this right. When you say teleport smell, right? I'm like envisioning like Star Trek, where I'm somewhere and I taste this plum.
Right.
And I tell someone at the other end of the world or some other universe, hey, here it is. Here's the information about this plum. Now reproduce it on the other side.
That's exactly
Is that
it.
what we're talking about?
It is. So you're hearing me unzip and kind of get out the actual teleported plum for you. Yeah. So this bottle, it's about 1.5 inches tall, about 1 inch wide, and it says Plum 1.0 on it.
Yeah,
and so we made a very few number of these vials, and on it are a number of ingredients, right? So 3-hexene, 1-ol, 1-hexanol, ethanol, etc. And there's about 12 of these ingredients. These are the actual molecules that the plum that we teleported, which is the first thing that we actually digitized the scent of and reprinted. These are just the ingredients from nature, right? So we didn't invent these molecules. We just, found them. We identified them. We got the ratios precisely correct. So one is at 4.96%, the other is at 4.71%, etc. This is the essence of the plum. And in this vial are maybe 10,000 moments or 10,000 experiences of just that first bite into a plum. And so I'll dip it for you here. And this is something that actually gets better over time. So the first experience, it needs to dry down a little bit. But here, if you can just give that a smell, if you close your eyes, does that remind you of a plum?
That is amazing.
Isn't it cool, right?
In fact, this is freaking amazing. I correct myself. That's truly amazing.
It's going to get better and more realistic, kind of more, you'll get more of the skin of the plum over time. So it is like, it's the digitized and reprinted essence of a fruit, right? Of a moment biting into a specific fruit, like the kind of fresh plum that still has a snap into it. We saved it, and it's here. It's digitized and it's available forever. We now do this routinely. So we do this for all kinds of scents in the world, both real scents and engineered scents. And so our AI system is digesting huge amounts of scent data, and it's getting quite good about reasoning about what is a scent that smells natural, what smells good, what's affordable, what's clean. We can reason about all of these things. So it's a really exciting moment in the company.
So what does it mean to digitize smell? Like what exactly does it mean?
Step by step, how does it work? So you take a real smell, whatever that thing is. So let's take a plum, stick with that example. Take the plum, take a slice of it, put it into a vial, and let it sit in that vial for a few seconds so that the smell is beginning to fill the air in that vial. And then what you can do is you can take it to a machine called a GCMS, or a gas chromatography mass spectrometry device. It's about the size of a dishwasher. And what you do is that device has a robotic arm that can put a needle into that vial and sip a little bit of the air inside of the vial. And that the air in the vial is filled with the smell of that plum. And that sipped air is then injected into a device which gets the molecular parts list of every single molecule that was in that small air sample. We can talk about how it does that specifically, but it's a beautiful device. There's like 12 Nobel Prizes that have gone into it. It's incredible. What we do that's different than really any company in the world is we take the raw, untouched data off of that device and we interpret it with AI. So normally you have a team of chemists that looks at that data very carefully, very manually. We don't do any of that. It's all with AI. And so we interpret the raw data and we produce a chemical formula directly from that data. And so that's what's printed on this vial.
So those are the molecules that separate through the GCMS?
Exactly, yeah. So if we want to dig in one level down, a GCMS is two parts. It's a GC, gas chromatograph, and an MS, a mass spectrometer. The GC, think of it like a race. So imagine all the runners in a race in a marathon clumped together at the starting line. Well, at the finish line, the group of the fastest finish together, the group of the second fastest finish together, etc. That's what a GC does. It takes all the different molecules that are clumped together and separates them, usually by their molecular weight. So the lightest molecules finish first, they run the race the fastest, and the heaviest finish last. The way it physically does it is the GC is an oven, and it's got a 50-meter long cable coiled inside that oven, and you're forcing the gas through that coil over about, anywhere between 10 to 60 minutes. And that causes the molecules to, the light ones run that race, that 50 meters super fast, and the heavier ones run it slower. And then that race is connected to the mass spectrometer. right? So these the molecules are exiting the race one kind of molecular species at a time, but all you know is how long it took for that molecule to run the race at that standpoint. You want to know what that molecule is. And so the mass spectrometer does two things. It takes the molecule and it cracks it. So it hits it with a bunch of energy, and molecules will fracture along characteristic lines. And then it weighs those fragments very, very, very precisely. And so what you get is how long it took that specific molecule to run the race. And then you get the weights of all the pieces, and you can play a Sudoku puzzle and figure out what actual original molecule could have satisfied all those particular measurements that you saw.
So where does the AI come in here?
The data that comes off of these mass specs, off of the GC mass spec, is very large. Gigabytes per hour, sometimes like 40 or 50 or 60 gigabytes per hour, and requires normally human interpretation. So this isn't like a microphone that just records an MP3, which you can play back. This is more like an astronomical telescope that records raw data that requires a team to interpret it. We built AI systems to take the raw data and turn it into, it's very easy to say, but turn it into the chemical formula. So when I'm describing it's very easy to figure out this molecule has this characteristic pattern from the GC and MS readouts, that's actually not a straightforward interpretation. And we've taken all of the art and the craft of interpreting this data, and we've automated it. So that way we just run these GCMSs 24/7, and we kind of overclock them. We run them faster than most people would, and then we let AI take care of the interpretation of the data to just get us the chemical formula just right out of the device.
And so what does that interpretation look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the raw data off of the GCMS, you can almost think of it as a spectrogram, right? So in audio, you might have a time on the x-axis, then you might have frequency on the y-axis, and then human speech looks like a kind of a comb pattern in the spectrograph. You might have seen these things before. The raw data off of a mass spec kind of looks similar. So the time axis is the GC runtime. It's how long it takes the molecules to travel through this 50-meter race. And the y-axis is mass over charge, which is a proxy for the weight of the molecules or of the fragments. And at any given point in time, some molecules are exiting the race and entering the mass spec, and they're getting fragmented, causing a fingerprint type pattern to show up in the spectrograph. And it's much, much sparser than what it looks like for spoken word spectrographs, but I think it's reasonable to think of it in those terms.
So the AI just sort of takes that and creates a representation out of it that says, okay, this is a plum that we're smelling.
Yeah, and we embed all of this raw data into a high-dimensional olfactory space. So RGB is a three-dimensional color space. Our olfactory space is about 300-dimensional. So we can embed it directly in the space, and then we can decode the coordinate in that space as a chemical formula, and then recreate that formula, basically creating printing instructions for our fragrance printer robot to recreate that particular smell.
So Alex, if you go back to your sort of journey in this space, right, you've been in smell for a while. You were working with Sandeep, Datta, who was actually a guest on the podcast a few months ago.
Cool.
Yeah. At what point did you feel that this is going to work? Like, what were the breakthroughs in AI required to enable computers to smell?
So I'll tell you the kind of timeline that I saw. So the first, and I think we might have talked about this a year ago or even before or offline. The first point where I came in contact with this problem was a TED talk given by Luca Turin. And he proposed two things. He said, look, we don't know why things smell the way that they do. Like, why does this structure smell like cedar wood or pine or jasmine? And then the second part was he proposed a specific answer for that question, which I don't really believe is correct, but I think it's a huge contribution that he made to simply say, we don't understand why a molecule smells the way that it does. That's called the structure-odor relation problem. And to me, that was like front and center, like, oh my God, why don't we know how this works? It's like, not knowing how to translate a wavelength of light into whether or not it's red or green or blue. It seems like a crazy fundamental blocker in the understanding of olfaction. And that to me was the first important milestone, was simply to have asked the question, like, why don't we understand how smell works? And then fast forward, I don't know, like 10 years later, a few things dropped into place before I started working on that specific problem at Google Brain. I think the most important piece is that AI for chemistry matured dramatically. So the ability to take in a molecule as a data input and to predict its property as an output was a thing that didn't exist when I first heard about this problem in scent, and also didn't exist when I started my PhD. So, or even when I finished my PhD, frankly. The invention of graph neural networks as a tool that any practitioner in machine learning can use, that happened in really just the last like 5 or 10 years. Graph neural networks have existed for a long time, but they're kind of, I don't want to say commoditization, but their use in a robust way in practical applications began, I think, with a paper by Dougal, Maclaurin, David Duvenaud, Alán, Ryan Adams, and a few others to show that graph neural networks can be used to do material design. They applied it specifically to, I believe it was LED design, but it was a molecular design problem. After that paper, there was a flurry of activity applying graph neural networks and many subvariants of them to problems in drug discovery, which is where I think there has still been the most activity in the research space, is applying AI to relatively large molecules, not quite proteins, but large, small molecules. And those techniques matured. They became something where you could read a paper, the algorithms were very clear, the benchmarking was clear against traditional methods. And to me, that was a huge breakthrough. It was like, oh my God, we could use deep learning finally in the context of chemistry. Which, it sounds so weird that wasn't a solved problem, but AI, for the most part, likes very structured inputs, like grids, right? Images are grids. Text is just a long, thin grid. Sound is treated as a spectrograph, which is treated as an image, which is a grid. Molecules are not grids. They're graphs, fundamentally. They have all kinds of different sizes and shapes and connectivities. But this crew of people, which became a very healthy research community, figured it out. So we borrowed those ideas, and then we combined them with some data that I had become aware of just because I'm obsessed with smell. I'd kind of learned where all the great smell data sets were living, some of them public, some of them private, and we brought them all in, we curated them. And these were the two ingredients. Do we have the algorithm? Yes, graph neural networks. Do we have the data? Yes, we curated that. We built a data set. And we combined those, and we found that actually we could get state-of-the-art prediction on why a molecule smells the way that it does. And then the next step, and I'm abbreviating years of work, we actually did a double-blind human study to say, okay, let's not retrospectively test whether or not our algorithms are accurate. Let's prospectively test whether we can predict the smell of a molecule that has never been smelled before. Some had never been made before. And can we get it right in a double-blind human trial? And can our predictions match up in quality with that of a person who's been trained to label the data? And the way we can measure this is a panel average is always better than one person in the panel. And we can ask, are our algorithms' predictions worse than the worst person on the panel? Are they in the pack, or are they somehow superhuman? And the answer turned out to be, in what I consider to be a form of Odour Turing test, our algorithm was able to predict the smell of a molecule better than the median panelist was able to describe the physical sample with respect to distance to the panel mean, which is an incredible milestone. So we passed human performance in odor description, and that to me was a really, really big milestone. And we published that in the journal Science, and it forms the basis of almost everything that we do today at Osmo. What that told me was Mother Nature is not standing in the way of taking the next step. I really did feel like single molecule odor character prediction was a critical path blocker for doing anything more complicated. The next step is, okay, great. So you can feed in a pre-digitized structure of a molecule and predict a digital representation of its smell. Let's make that physical. Let's make the input physical. Let's make the output physical. Let's round trip a smell. Take in a physical smell, that's not just a molecule. There's no single molecules in nature anywhere. It's all blends, taking a full, actual, real smell, in this case, a plum. And let's digitize that chemical reality with the best sensors that we can find. Let's just stack the deck in our favor for the first step here. And then let's interpret that data in such a form where we can reconstitute it, reprint it. And let's have that all be without any human intervention, right? So once the scent enters into this pipeline, a scent better exit the pipeline that smells identical to the input. Mm-hmm. And this plum that we're smelling, which is, I think, getting better and more realistic, you should give it a sniff, is the first example of that. So to me, that was the second critical path blocker from a technological perspective, is can we actually fully round trip from analog to digital to analog a smell? And the answer is unequivocally yes. And now we do this routinely, and we're pushing back the boundary. So we have a system which understands smell. We're feeding it more data all the time. And now we can do things like design new fragrances at will.
So if I were to summarize what you said in 2 sentences, and I might mangle it, the first part was the science, that is the proof of science that you can actually go from molecular structure to a smell, to how it's perceived, right? That there's a mapping from molecular structure to smell. And the second part is the engineering of it, which is, okay, now that we know that there's a nice mapping between molecules and smell, how do we engineer it and make it happen so that we actually start in the analog world and end in the analog world? So you read it. I'm borrowing from a conversation I had with Patrick O'Shaughnessy. You read it and then you write it.
Yes, exactly. Read, map, write. Those are the 3 steps for digitizing any human sense. Yeah, I mean, maybe we're waxing poetical, but often the boundaries between science and engineering are very blurry. And so I don't know if I would characterize it as a science first, then engineering. Like, it's always a blend of both. There's some activities in the process of doing this that we're definitely engineering, which is like, we need these mass specs to run in a specific way. We need this fluid handling robot to be able to handle all these source ingredients. That was a lot of engineering. But then there's these questions of like, well, will this work? And, if there's ever an open-ended question where you don't know the answer, you're doing science. And if there's a question where you actually should know the answer, it's just a matter of work, that's the engineering part. And these things intertwine and braid. And we usually find ourselves switching effortlessly between them.
So what are your products at the moment? Because last time we spoke, you didn't have a product.
That is correct.
And now you do.
Yes, that is correct. So we were fully in research mode about a year ago, and now we're very, very much in product and commercial mode. We design and manufacture beautiful fragrances. So the fragrance market is huge. 90% of our household products have a fragrance in them. They're made by companies you've probably never heard of. They prefer to be secretive. They're usually made by a person called a perfumer. There's only 600 perfumers in the world. There's more astronauts alive than perfumers. And what we're trying to do is bring beautiful scent design to more products. So the specific thing that we're offering is to emerging brands. So these are brands that are not giants, that are not huge, that aren't necessarily selling in Sephora yet. But every brand starts small. And there's this catch-22, which is if you're small, you can't get the attention of a fragrance design company. They're called fragrance houses. But if you don't have a great fragrance, and traditionally only these fragrance houses could make you a custom fragrance. If you don't have a custom fragrance, how are you going to grow your brand? And so we've basically cut the Gordian knot, and we use a combination of human creativity and human perfumery augmented with olfactory intelligence, with OI, to create beautiful, custom, winning fragrances, but in a way that's accessible to emerging brands and done really quickly.
How do you do that? There were so many questions I had when you were speaking. Like, what's special about these 600 perfumers to begin with? Like, why are they special? But the question that made me think of is like, how are you leveraging humans and AI to create new fragrances?
So I'll pull this up on the screen. I don't know how we're going to represent this for the viewers at home, but do you want to just design a fragrance right now?
Sure.
Do you want to just see how that works?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll do that. This is something we haven't released yet. So we'll describe it, but we'll be able to show this to the world a little bit later. So let me go ahead and you're hearing me type on my screen. I'm hitting share screen here. So this is a tool that allows anybody, and today right now it's just our direct clients, but this is going to be anybody soon. It allows anybody to tap into our OI system to design a scent. So let's design one. What do you want it to smell like? What inspires you?
Provence.
Provence, okay. So Provence, France. A particular season?
Spring.
So in spring. Are there any feelings or moods or time of day?
Early morning.
Okay, early morning. So Provence, France, in spring, early morning. That we've just put this in a text input, just like we talked to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then we're going to click generate. And we use text. We could have used an image. We could have used a video. We could have used sound. And then what we're doing is creating, using generative AI, an image, some copy, some more text. But then we're going to use our OI to actually create a fragrance profile. So here we've created L'Aube Provençale. The tagline is "Awaken your senses with the serene and gentle embrace of spring and Provence's early morning light." And then we've created this fragrance profile. We've got woody, mineral, citrus, floral, green, herbal. These are our odor grand families. And then the source code of this fragrance is here, right? So we've created a short formula. It's caryophyllene, hexanyl cis-3 acetate, triplol, lineal acetate, lineal. These would be combined in specific ratios, which are not showing on the screen, but the system understands, and that we could...
Just out of curiosity, which of those is doing the heavy lifting? Because this linalool, I believe, is like very common, right? It's a workhorse.
Yeah.
So which ones of these are...
It's going to depend on the ratios, which we're not showing here, but each of these will be a different aspect of the fragrance for sure. So linalool and lineal acetate are really common in floral, and so because we're in Provence and we've got like a floral field in this image that we're representing here, like we've got some floral molecules that are going to do some work for us for sure. So what I'll do is I'll just I will grab this link, but we can just make this for you at some point. So I will hold on to that. But this is what I mean by like designing a fragrance. So we just did that in 60 seconds or however long that was. That would normally be a 3, 6, 12-month process. And we want to bring the ability to design beautiful fragrances to anybody in the world.
That's pretty mind-boggling. So in theory, what this means is that if you've got the reagents with you, you can make this at home.
You can make it at home. You're probably not going to have all those reagents, but what you can do is you can have us make it on our fragrance robot and ship it to you overnight. And so that's something that we're doing. We're offering this. So this will all be, ready over time. But this is, I think, something really special that we're going to be able to share with the world.
Wow. Super, super cool. So I want to come back to what goes on all day at Osmo. I mean, I realize you're an AI company and a smell company sort of simultaneously.
Right.
So what is your secret sauce?
Yeah. So there really is no secret. Everything, in order to digitize a scent, you can just break it down into steps, and you have to do all those steps at absolutely top quality and top speed. And that just means you have to have certain skills, certain people, certain instruments, certain infrastructure. And look, if somebody wants to go off and digitize scent as well, go for it. If you're going to do that, you're basically going to build Osmo over again, right? So the secret is just get to work and be very mindful about every detail along the way that's required to do this. And what that means is, in practice, taking very balkanized talent. So we are an AI company, but we're a chemistry company. And we're also, we have a sales organization, and we have G&A, and we've got, machine learning and data engineering. And there's all these sub-disciplines and sub-disciplines And you can't miss a single one of them. You have to bring them all together, and you have to create a culture where everybody not only can, but wants to communicate and share knowledge and build. And that's frankly, maybe if I were to say what is the secret, like I think a culture where people are curious and tenacious and kind and working towards what many people thought was an impossible goal, like, yeah, maybe that's the secret.
But you do have like the molecules that you made, right? Like Glossine and a few others.
Wizerine and Fractalin, yeah.
Right. So, but those are like proprietary to you, right? You're not publishing the formulas for those molecules.
Yeah, it would just be the structure. So those are just individual molecules, just like a drug would have one single structure. Yeah.
Right. But I can imagine that would be very difficult to reverse engineer that molecule, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's AI discovered and it's patented, and we make these ingredients at scale, and those are our special ingredients. We do license, we do sell those, and so other people are welcome to use them in their products. That's part of our business. We discovered them from scratch.
So how did you discover those? That must have been some sort of an iterative process where you started one place and used humans, right? Because I see you've got plenty of humans here.
So the paper that we published in Science, I think, lays the groundwork for how we think about this, which is doing new molecular discovery is kind of like looking for a needle in a haystack. So there's a set of possible molecules that you could synthesize. It's a huge set. In the case for molecules that could have a smell, it's about 40 billion molecules could have a smell. Some small subset of them can be made in a reasonable amount of time and money, so it's about 2 billion. And that's our haystack, 2 billion molecules that we have to sift through to find our products. And what we do is digitally, we predict the perceptual properties, the physical properties, the safety properties, the economic properties of all of these molecules. And then we run a SQL query on those predictions. And we say, hey, look, today we want to discover a molecule that smells like X, Y, or Z. But in order for this to be a product, the EPA has to approve it. And we deeply want to be, we want to create products that are safe and that are clean. And so it also has to be biodegradable. And it can't be a skin irritant and it can't be an ocular irritant. Well, guess what? Those are columns in our database. And so we then screen digitally, and we get a list of molecules that we want to make, and we make them, and then we test them, right? So and then with those test results, then go back into the database and improve the models. And this is an iterative process. So we're constantly ordering molecules, we're constantly testing molecules. We are when we find molecules we really like, we're building variants of them to optimize them. But there's a machine now that we've built for this.
So there's like just good old-fashioned chemistry going on to produce the molecules.
Yeah.
And then where do the humans come into the picture? Because
right when we unbox the package, if we order it, or when we make it. I mean, we run a human trial right away. We smell them, right? And so that's really, really important that we smell them. Now, in some cases...
what do those trials look like? Like, what are you trying to figure out?
So just like we did for dipping a blotter into this Plum 1.0 vial, we're holding a paper blotter and we're smelling it and we're giving our impressions. We have groups of people who can smell new molecules and grade the quality of that ingredient for commercial success. And we have our own internal grading system where we say, hey, look, this is really interesting. Let's continue to advance this. Or, like this, maybe the smell is not strong enough, or maybe it's not the right smell, or maybe it's too expensive. And so we have a grading for everything that we make. And the top graded molecules we continue to work on. And the bottom graded molecules we drop off. And all that data goes back into the system to retrain it.
And are some people better smellers than others?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just like people can have better or worse vision or better or worse hearing, there are people who have more acute, more sensitive noses. And there's another axis besides just like how sensitive you are. There's how much time have you spent learning how to translate your experience of smell into words. And you asked like what makes a perfumer special. Frankly, a lot of perfumery training is simply learning how to take a sensory experience, a scent, and then write out what you are experiencing in a way which uses a standard language. And every perfume school has their own kind of language for that. We have our own.
How many words in that language?
Boy, it's hierarchical. So there's the grand families like woody, green, fruit, floral, and then for every grand family there's subfamilies. Like for woody, you'd get into cedar wood, or maybe you'd start with like bark or roots or nuts or something like that. But then you get into the specific odor objects, right? Like sandalwood. And then there's even a level below that, which is it Indian or is it Australian sandalwood? And there is a difference. And if I handed them both to you, you'd be able to tell the difference. And then there's what harvest year, what region of sandalwood. So think of like regions and varietals in harvest in wine, right? It really does get down to that level. And
so one has to learn how to smell.
Oh yeah. It's just practice, though.
Yeah. This reminds me of a book by Oliver Sacks called Anthropologist on Mars. It was like 7 case studies of people with some sort of, quote unquote disorders. But there was this one study I'm reminded of where this person regained his sight in adulthood. He learned how to see. He'd never seen, and it was not a pleasant experience for him to learn how to see as an adult. And the larger point that Oliver Sacks makes is that seeing is something that we learn how to do.
I 100% believe that.
We sort of take it for granted once we learn how to see, but it's just like learning how to see is a pretty major part of growing up. And I guess most of us never really learn how to smell.
Well, I think we all learn how to experience the sensory world because we enjoy food and drink and all those things. And that requires your sense of smell. Like, if you have a cold, you can't really taste any flavor because flavor is 90% smell. But most of us, you're right, do not know how to talk about smell, right? So when we're tasting a spice, like how many of us can say, oh, that's cardamom, right? Or that's thyme, or that's herbe de Provence, right? It's a blend. It just takes practice, right? And we provide that practice for everybody at Osmo. So if you join the company, you're going to learn how to smell. You're going to learn how to talk about smell, at least to a certain level. And guess what? If you're really good at that, we're going to teach you even more. And we're going to rely on you even more. We're going to rely on your nose. So I think there's some people who've discovered that they have a real ability that they didn't know that they had, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And the gap between novice and expert it's just practice. It's a lot of practice. Yeah.
I can actually imagine that there could be other capabilities that those people have that have a sense of smell, that they might have other capabilities that they're not actually aware of.
As a broader point, I think that's true across so many different dimensions.
Yeah.
That, I just find it in my travels. Like, I meet people who are capable of so much more than they know they're capable of. And those are some of my favorite moments as a scientist, as an entrepreneur, just as a person, is to find someone right before they kind of burst into light or burst into flames and really discover their own ability, their own capability. And I love working with those people as they're kind of stepping into their skin and discovering what they're really, really capable of. And then like feeding them, helping them, supporting them, like just rooting for them. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. So let's come back to the business of smell, because I'm just curious. How do you look at the whole sort of, like, what does sort of the market look like at the moment? And I can imagine that it's going to be quite different in the future. But what does it look like now, and where do you see it going?
Yeah. So the fragrance market, so we're talking about designing scent, not detecting it. The fragrance market is about $20 billion annually. So a lot of fragrances being bought and it's being put into products. And those fragrances are going into products, and that market is huge, right? So fragrance is a small input to a much bigger market. And it's growing. It's growing faster than the population. It's growing faster than inflation. And there's a few, huge companies that buy about 30% of all fragrances. So think like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Henkel, SC Johnson. These are folks that are stocking massive amounts of products on shelves everywhere. And then there's everybody else.
And who are their suppliers?
There's a small number of fragrance companies, the largest of which have been around for over a century. There's about 50 companies globally that design and manufacture fragrance for these companies. Now we're one of them. Generation is a fragrance company that designs and manufactures fragrance.
So how are you different from the other 50?
We offer three things that you can't get all together anywhere else. The first is accessibility. So if you are starting a brand, like, good luck getting the attention of some of these incumbent and large fragrance houses. It's just difficult. You have to find the right person to email. There's nowhere on the website to go. Like, it's just, hey, look, please design a scent for me. I'll pay you money. Good luck. It's actually surprisingly hard. So just email us or click a button on our website. It's very, very easy to get started with us. So accessibility will work with you. And that also means we'll start small, right? So, building low volumes of fragrance is something that most fragrance houses do not do. But we will. And then speed, right? So can we get you your fragrance, a beautiful one that's, tailored for your brand? Can we get that to you fast? So can we do that in weeks or months as opposed to months or years? And the answer is yes. Like, this isn't hypothetical. We do this. We've done this. And then there's this third pillar. So accessibility, speed, quality. So if you want a great fragrance, you usually have to wait for it, right? So if you want a custom fragrance that's truly, built for your consumers and your brand, usually you have to sacrifice in the accessibility and on the speed. So getting all three of those, accessibility for emerging brands, speed for emerging brands, which is critical for survival, and then quality. You actually want a great product. You want a custom product. Normally you're getting something from a library, right? So you're getting somebody else's smell for your brand. I don't believe that. I believe you should get something that is new and custom to you. So that's what we offer.
It's almost like a smell logo.
Yeah, that is the case. And I think that's going to be true for more companies over time, right? Yeah. So Chanel has a smell logo. It's Chanel number 5, right? It's so recognizable in the world of fashion. But Uber doesn't have a smell logo, right? The black cars should have a smell that feels like luxury and like, customer service. And it's the same for DoorDash, right? Like, there should be a yummy smell that comes with all their material.
But not just businesses, right? Individuals, I can imagine. Mm-hmm. Like, you and I could have like a logo, right? I mean, I want to have, a Vassant logo.
Yeah,
right?
you could.
That's me.
Maybe we just made it for you, right? Yeah. On the screen. But I completely agree with that. I think we're going there in the same way that, just look on the street or look on television. No two people are wearing exactly the same clothes. The amount of variety and color and vividness that we can access for personal fashion is huge. And, we can put wallpaper on our walls. We can put image and art on our walls. We can fill our homes with sound and music. I think we're moving towards a world where scent will have that same pervasiveness, that same richness, that same accessibility. And look, we're starting where we are today, which is helping emerging brands build their scent logo, build their scent identity. But what we're going to be launching later this summer is bringing that to everybody. And I'm really excited for that.
So where are you on the, I sometimes teach a course on tech innovation, and we talk about S-curves and, disruptions and all that kind of stuff. Where are you on this S-curve of innovation, and what are the axes here?
Yeah. The axes for, technological progress, the x-axis is always time which is proportional to money. The y-axis is some capability, right? So for, light, it's, candelas per dollar or something like that. For scent, I would say we don't know what that axis exactly is, but it's like the ease with which one can create a custom and personal scent. And so if I were to throw out a couple y-axes, I think it would be the dollar cost of a custom scent of a particular quality, hard to quantify. Another would be like the time it takes to design and fulfill a custom scent for a brand of a particular size or of a volume order of a particular size. We're, dramatically compressing that time while keeping quality high and fixed. I think in terms of technological progress, we are entering the exponential growth part now. And we were on the flat part on the left of the S-curve as we were proving out some fundamental capabilities, like can we predict why a molecule smells the way that it does? Can we actually transit a smell from physical to digital back to physical? All those things are now done, and we are now collecting enormous amounts of data that is rapidly improving the capabilities of our AI systems, which are being put into software products that our perfumers use, that our customers use, and that ultimately our consumers will be using as well. And so we're not like on the full-on exponential part yet, but we are taking off now. And I would expect in very short order, like 3 or 6 months from now, or definitely the next time that we speak, we will fully be in the exponential growth part. Yeah.
And what drives it? What's driving this?
Data.
So so we've talked previously, and you mentioned that you had this sort of active learning process, and I just want you to unpack a little bit, unpack that a little bit for the listeners.
Sure.
What does that mean?
So when I talked about how we digitized a smell, which is a physical object comes in, we break it down to its molecular parts list with the GCMS. We encode it into a coordinate on our scent map. We decode that into a formula, and we print it on a robot. That's one leg of the active learning loop. And then guess what? Somebody takes that smell off the robot and they smell it and they write down what they smelled. And then that scent goes right back into the mass spectrometer, and we analyze what came out. And so now we've produced two labels. We produced a sensor label and we've produced a human label, and that whole package goes into the database, which can retrain the model, and the model gets to try, gets to propose what sense to make next on the robot, and that's what creates the active learning loop.
So just for the listeners, active learning, I guess, means that you are gathering data with some sort of an objective in mind. You're not just gathering it randomly. And so the objective that you have here in mind is to create an odor that has a certain property, and you're sort of moving it away a little bit from where you are. Is that the trial and error that's going on?
The goal is manyfold, but it's generally to have an AI system that understands scent, which we call OI. And one use of that is to be able to specify what scent you want in plain language or in an image or some form of media, and then to get out a scent which is that thing that you requested. And the ultimate judge of that is you and me. You're the user of the system. And it turns out there's wrong answers and there's right answers, right? There's smells that are, resonant with a particular description or image, and those that are not, right? So if you said, I want the smells of Provence, France, and I gave you the smell of a hamburger, you'd probably say no. But there may be many possible smells that are resonant with your vision of what you wrote into our tool just now. And our goal is to steer the system to produce those scents for you. And we're getting pretty good at it.
So when it produces them, a bunch of humans then smell them,
oh, yeah.
and then you look at the agreement or disagreement among them?
We look at many things. So in some cases, we look at similarity. We look at hedonic liking. We look at the odor characters. I mean, there's many different axes.
What do you see as sort of the barriers to entry here for people who want to get into sort of the olfaction space, the AI on olfaction?
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do with generation is to lower those barriers to nothing, to design and create your own scents and your own brands with fragrances in them. What we've had to do to enable that is immense, right? So you've walked around the lab, you've seen all the equipment, you've seen the people running around and all the technology that we've built, the science that we've done, some that we've published, most that we haven't. We've had to build it all from scratch. And so, I mean, my hope is that by Osmo, and by extension now Generation, our fragrance house, doing all of this work on the platform, we can make it so that people that want to engage in fragrance and create scent and understand it and have it be more a part of their lives, create brands, that the bar for them is low. Because it was certainly not low for us when we started.
Yeah. And so what do you think it's going to look like in 5 years? You think people will be ordering customized fragrances?
It's going to look like that in 6 months. That's definitely around the bend. But I just think there's going to be more beautiful fragrances in the world, and not in a way that's overpowering or cloying. I think there's just going to be more beauty. Like this olfactory channel of our reality, of our consciousness, is not filled with enough beauty. And it's just too hard to create right now. But I think that we're building the tools and the experiences to make it not only easy but fun. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I think I heard you tell someone that the way you look is really important, but the way you smell is just like, people notice that, right? I think I heard you say that somewhere. So I guess this will lead to a lot more happiness, I guess, right?
That's the hope. I mean, the mission for Osmo on the whole is to digitize our sense of smell to improve human happiness and health.
Yeah.
And, today we're starting on the happiness part, the beauty part. And it turns out that everything that we learn when we design fragrances is teaching us just about scent itself. And we're already seeing, and we'll check in on this next time we talk, that this is helping us understand the scent of living things in their wellness state, their health state. Scent is just molecules. And so the more we learn about molecules and the more we increase happiness with scent, we're actually already laying the groundwork for increasing health as well.
Yeah. No, and health is just wide open. That's a huge area. Well, Alex, I'm a huge fan. Good stuff. I mean, this is so cool what you're doing here at Osmo.
I really appreciate that. And it's always fun to chat. And thanks for coming into the lab. And we'll be in touch, man. The next time we chat, there'll be more fun stuff to share.
For sure.
Cool.
All right, cool. Thanks
Thank
again.
You.